Alright, so today we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people probably forgot about in the span of all the news happening with Genshin and Honkai Star Rail, all that type of stuff that is happening around the Hoyoverse sphere, and that is of the rerun that is coming out alongside Baiju, which is for Ganyu. Now Ganyu has been in the game for a very long time, so a lot of people have been acclimated with her, a lot of people have her, but of course there are some that still don't have her and want to get her for this time around. So we are going to be talking about, is she still worth it in 3.6. So for the most part, we are going to be talking about the artifacts, the weapons, the talents, her best teams, all that type of stuff regarding Ganyu. And if you're enjoying this type of content when it comes to the guides or Genshin or Honkai Star Rail or Honkai, make sure to leave a sub and a like if you're enjoying the video. But other than that, let's get straight into the video in Ganyu's Is She Worth It? Now for the most part in Ganyu's challenge, you're going to be leveling up 1 primarily, because this is where going to be the most part of her damage is going to come from, which is her charge attack for her Phosphate Arrow. Now the Phosphate Arrow is a level 1 and level 2 charge, so the first one is going to be a cryo damage arrow as usual with the charge attack on the bow, and then when it charges to its second portion, you are going to be getting an AoE arrow that spawns from that initial arrow that you shoot down, and this is where most of her damage is going to come from. For the most part, you do want to level this up as high as you possibly want to. Level 8 is the best part to keep it at, but if you want to crown it to do that extra amount of damage, that will help as well, because she does have some really nice numbers when paired up with her best teams. Her skill doesn't need to be leveled up as much, although it does do a good amount of damage. It's just there to put some cryo on the unit so that you're able to swirl up a Kazuha, or to use the taunt that it gives off, which is basically when the enemies are around it, they're going to start trying to hit the flower, and the flower stays up for a certain amount of time. It blows up, it does damage. Not necessarily something you have to level up, but it does help with some extra damage. And then her burst is going to give her a buff, which we'll be talking about in a quick second. But for the most part, her burst is going to be doing a periodic shower of icicles that fall down on random enemies in the circle. And this is really good, not only because it's super low energy cost, it also has a buff that comes from one of her passives. It helps with cryo application for certain teams, and on certain teams with this you can pair it with other ults, and it just becomes absolute chaos when it comes to the damage that it happens to enemies or the amount of utility this brings to them. So it is a very good ult to level up. So you do want to do normal attack, burst, and then her skill. And now let's go ahead and talk about her passives, because this is the most important part about her kit, because for the most part all these things are going to be really cool and helping Ganyu out a lot. So when you use the second part of her charge attack, the crit rate of the second portion of the Phosphate Arrow is going to have an extra 20% crit rate. Now this is going to be really good when you notice of how much crit rate she's literally going to get from all of her other sources. Not only is she getting a 20% innate native damage increase, whatever, to her crit rate when it comes to her second portion of her Phosphate Arrow, but she also gets another 15% from Cryo Resonance, and she also gets another 40% from the Blizzard Strayer set. So yeah, she's getting around 60 to 75 crit rate depending on how you're building her with the artifacts, the weapon, and the Cryo Resonance. She just has so much utility in her passive when it comes to her crit rate coming from that. It also coming from the artifacts and the cryo resonance. She really is a low investment character with high reward, and the more you invest in her, the more crazy the numbers get with Ganyu. Another thing that is really cool about her burst, which comes from her passive, is that you get a 20% cryo damage bonus to active party members in the AoE. So of course you kind of want to pop this and then start going crazy with Ganyu, or you can use Ganyu as a support unit kinda if you want to use other cryo damage units, and you pop the burst first and then do this would be pretty cool too. And then her last passive is just a normal general trait passive, so it really doesn't matter. But for the most part, Ganyu is going to be using her signature bow, if you have it, because this is a free bow that you could get from the standard banner, not free quote unquote, but this is her signature bow. It helps with normal and charge attack damage, which for the most part you want it from charge attack. It has good attack scaling on it, which is going to help her hit harder, but of course it's not crit rate or crit damage. And for the amount of time that the arrow stays in the air, you do more damage, but I think you only need a small amount of range for it to actually proc the full damage bonus. But for the most part, this is her signature weapon. She does have better weapons. Her bestest slot is actually the Aqua Simulacra, just because not only does it give you damage dealt bonus when you are near enemies, You also get crit damage and a nice amount of base attack as well. So yeah, this is her actual best in slot because there's not that many bows that are able to help her like this. Besides the Aqua Simulacra, the Hunter's Path is really cool too, but they haven't brought it back in forever, just because it gives you a fat ton of crit rate, it gives you all elemental damage bonus, and it also gives you increased charge attack damage based on your elemental mastery. And when you run a Melt Ganyu team, which we're going to be talking about later, this is going to help a lot in how much damage she's going to be doing when it gives her extra damage based on her elemental mastery. If you don't have any of these, of course you can rock the Viridescent Hunt. It's going to help you get some grouping in with your enemies, and also gives you crit rate. You'll be almost at 100% crit rate if you rock this. And other than that, you might want to run energy recharge bows possibly. A lot of people rock Prototype Crescent. There's just a lot of other options that you could possibly run when it comes to Ganyu. Energy recharge goes for more burst oriented Ganyus that want to have it as a support. And that's pretty much it. There's not a lot of options besides the Prototype Crescent, because this does help charge attack hit based on you hitting a crit point or a weak point, which is going to be a little annoying on certain enemies. So this is why it's a little situational. But other than that, you can rock something like, I don't know, like the Moon's Moon maybe. There's just not a lot of crazy options that Ganyu has for her when it comes to 4-star options, as far as I know, because for the most part I've just been sticking her with a 5-star bow. But you know, the Prototype Crescent, the Battle Pass bow, an energy recharge bow, all the attack bows, these can help her little by little if you slot them into her. Now the main thing that's going to come from Ganyu is her artifacts. Now you can rock her in two different types of sets. You can either rock her on Wanderer's Troop, or you can rock her on Blizzard Strayer. In my honest opinion, I do think Blizzard Strayer is the better team to run her on, just because it's a lot easier to do all the things you have to do with Ganyu when it comes to this. Not only do you get that cryo damage bonus, but you also get a 20% crit rate increase just for them having cryo on top of them. And then if they're frozen, which is also one of her better teams, you get an extra 20% crit rate. So that's already 40 plus the 15 that you get, no, actually plus the 20 that you get from her passive. So it's a 60% crit rate automatically. And with that, say you have 20% crit rate from random substats on your artifacts, well, you're gonna be at 80% crit rate, and you don't really need to specify or specialize in a bunch of crit rate when you can put it into crit damage. So that's really, really good with the Blizzard Strayer set on Ganyu. Now if you're gonna be running something like a Wanderer's Troop set for Melt Ganyu, is going to be a little bit better for her, because she's going to get elemental mastery for the melt damage, and she's also going to get charge attack damage bonus because she is a bow user for Wanderer's Troop. And it's a little bit easier to get this set anyway, just because it drops from all the world bosses and stuff like that. So yeah, it does help to have these two sets. These are two really great sets on her. I don't think there's any other ones that you could possibly put that will match up to Blizzard Strayer in its utility and the amount of damage that you can get with a really well built Wanderer's Troop Ganyu. Now, like I said, you can mix and match some things when it comes to this. If you're rocking a Melt Ganyu, if you have enough attack, you can go ahead and put some type of EM bow on her. If you're rocking the Wanderer's Troop set, not Wanderer's Troop, if you're rocking the Blizzard Strayer set, you can go ahead and put an attack percent or energy recharge set on Ganyu to help you with her burst, to help you do a little bit more damage with her normal attacks. There's just, like I said, it's really pick and choose, because there's so much stat boost that you get from Cryo Resonance, from her artifacts, from her passives, that you can get that help her put other stats in more importance than crit rate. So that's a really, really good thing. When it comes to Ganyu and her constellations, she has some pretty good constellations in her arsenal. For C1, you're gonna get Cryo Res on 15% for 6 seconds when you use the second charge for the arrow. Now this is very, very strong. You not only do you already get the crit rate bonus from this, the second charge is really does hurt a really good amount. And then not only that, you're also getting Cryo Res on it too, so that's really, really cool. And then other than that, you also get 2 energy for Ganyu as well. So this is going to help her with her burst like crazy. So yeah, C1 is kind of cracked, not going to lie. Another thing with C2 is your skill is going to get an extra charge. So that's going to help with energy recharge. So that's not bad either. Not really the best constellation in the world. Not something you should really go forward for. C1 is kind of the good stopping point. C3 is the burst plus 3. C4 is when opponents are in the AoE of the burst, they take increased damage, and this increased damage taken by 5% increases 5% every 3 seconds up to 25%. So basically it's a good damage boost when you use her burst. It's really cool for C4, but again, I don't think it's as valuable as C1 for Primo Gems to Constellation. And then C5 is going to be her skill plus 3. And then C6 is where she becomes busted. This is where she gets her non-charging arrows when you use her skill, and paired with C2, this means you can rock 2 arrows that end up with no charges. So you can get a lot of damage done when it comes to having a C6 unit. Now, other than that, her teams are going to vary a little bit depending on how you want to run her and depending on what units you have. For the most part, you can run 2 different types of teams. For the first team, you could run a Melt Ganyu, and this can go with Ganyu, a periodic pyro damage dealer. Daya is pretty good for this. Kazuha or any other animal user that can share EM, and Nahida, where you can have infinite burn, or if you just have a bunch of pyro units like maybe Daya, Xiangling, Toma, all these other units that inflict pyro, you can have some type of melt team where there's so much pyro going on, you're gonna have your Ganyu have your arrows melt every single time, and it's gonna do a butt ton of damage. But one of the other teams that I enjoy a lot is Ganyu with other cryo units. So Ganyu, Shenhe, Kazuha, and Zhongli. This is a really good team, not only because you're buffing cryo by a lot using Shenhe, using Kazuha for the elemental damage boost, using Ganyu for the really good arrow damage, and then having Zhongli, of course, so you're not getting thrown around. This is a really nice team. And then other than that, there's also the perma freeze team where you could run, you know, Kokomi, and then have Kazuha and Zhongli. Like, again, you want to have that shield just in case, but you can kind of shred off Zhongli just because everyone's going to be frozen, so you can rock Shenhe or other cryo units or other hydro units to help you out. There's just a lot of different options when you want to run freeze, just because you don't have to run a shielder because everyone's just going to be stuck being frozen. And then lastly, we do have another really cool team that you can run with Ganyu, which is Venti included, Ayato, and maybe Nahida or some other unit that can help with Venti's tornado. So the main premise of this team basically is use Venti's ult, use Ganyu's ult, use Ayato's ult, and the rain that comes from Ayato's ult and the icicles that come from Ganyu's ult all do AoE damage. They're all going to hit those enemies in the vortex, and then whatever the last unit is doing, maybe Nahida for some dendro cores, maybe Raiden for the electro application in the vortex. There's just a lot of things you can do with Ganyu with how cool her burst is. The only problem that, like I said, is a real turnoff for a lot of people is that Ganyu is a stationary and a charge attack user for bow, and a lot of people don't like that. But for the most part, she still hits like a truck. She still is really good in this game. There's kind of no downside to her besides her being a really good DPS and a bow user. She's just a really nice unit, and she hasn't been power crept. She's still very strong. You just have to have a shield for the most part when it comes to using her in the abyss, just so you don't get flung around when you're doing the harder content. But for everything in the overworld, she's pretty much gonna one-shot everything. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. This is pretty much Ganyu, and is she worth it? She is a very great character, and she still holds one of the best damage dealers in Cryo DPS and DPS period. So other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the next one, and peace.